So in this video, we're going to pick up where we left off in the last, that being Introduction to SPSS Basics, which was the last video in the playlist if you wanted to check it out. And this video, along with the last, is meant to serve as a simple and quick introduction to IBM SPSS statistics. The data used throughout this lecture can be found in the video description below. So as you can see here, we still have our sample data from the video description. And let's say that we wanted to sort our data by ascending or descending order as it relates to a single particular variable. Now, there's other ways to do this, but probably the most basic introductory way is to select the variable which you're interested in sorting by, right-click it, and you can either sort by descending or ascending, whatever suits your particular needs. And now also, if we wanted to add a variable, let's say we wanted to add an additional variable to our already established 5 variables, we could right-click any of these variables really, but we could right-click and select Insert Variable. And by selecting a particular variable, we could select where we'd like to have that placed, but you're not stuck with the variable placement. You can move it around wherever you think is appropriate. And if you didn't like the variable that you had created or you did this by accident, you can either click undo until you get to the point where the user action was the creation of the variable, in which the case the variable will disappear, or you could right-click the variable itself and click clear. And again, you have to select it from the uppermost variable row, selecting the entire column, and then click clear. All right, so we're back to our original data set. So let's say we want to do some analysis, right? Because all the data is well and good as long as it's accurate and to our liking. Let's say we want to perform some analysis on our data. We're going to do some basic analysis really quick. Let's do data. Actually, we're going to go to analyze. So from the top menu, we're going to go to analyze. We're going to go to descriptive statistics, and we're going to select frequencies. Okay, so analyze, descriptive statistics, frequencies. And let's say we're interested in the frequency only of variable Q2. Now we could add and remove other variables that we're interested in by doing the following. Just select the variable, whatever the variable is in your data set, and then click this over here. And if the variable appears on the right, that will mean that that variable is going to be considered as the analysis is applied. So we're just going to do gender. So let's move this back by selecting the variable and clicking the arrow to move it back to the left. So here's our variable. We're going to perform a simple analysis. We're not going to do any additional analysis other than what the program has scheduled to be performed generically. But if we did want to structure our output to our needs, we could select one of these particular boxes, which will present us with a submenu with some additional options for output, whether it be graphical or additional numerical output. But we're just going to use the generic output. So we've selected variable gender, Q2. Q2 is our variable. Gender is the variable label, and we're going to click OK. Now, what will pop up, which was not present before, is the output window. So this is where our output is displayed. And also up here, we have our output syntax. All right. So now we have a couple different files going on. So we have our data as contained in the SPSS statistics data editor. Now, this is the data as we're editing it in SPSS. Any edits that we make to our data after it was imported into SPSS, they will only reflect those changes, those modifications in SPSS. The original data, whether it was CSV, Excel, or SAS, that data will remain as it was in its original state. Any changes that we make in SPSS only apply to the SPSS version of that data. All right. So we have our original data file somewhere. We have our SPSS statistics data editor user interface, which contains a new data file. This data file being the data file that we are manipulating as it was from the original data file. And then we have our output. This is the output related to any analysis that we perform. So here is the result of our analysis. If we wanted to change the analysis, make some changes to it, if we wanted to add additional perhaps rows or columns, we could do that by double clicking on the output. And then we have some different options that appear in this submenu here that we could play around with. If we wanted to get rid of it completely, we could right click it and we could cut it and not paste it back, and that would remove it. We could also edit it from this portion over here. But something I wanted to point out, because we're going to work with one other window or one other aspect of SPSS, and that is the syntax editor. So we have our syntax over here as it relates to our analysis that we had just performed, our frequency analysis for variable Q2. Let's say that we wanted to streamline this particular analysis. We will go to File, New, Syntax. And what this syntax window is this is our coding window. So we have our user interface, our data editor, we have our output, and then we have an area where we can write and execute code and save code. So let's go ahead and click here on this syntax output. All right. We're going to select it all. We're going to copy it. And you can use, if you're using a Windows computer, Control C and Control V. But if you're not, just copy it in this manner by right-clicking, copy, paste. This is the sort we had done earlier. We don't need this. But let's say, for whatever reason, we decided that we wanted to eliminate all of this output. But we now want to perform the analysis again, but we don't want to have to go through the steps of clicking, finding where it is in the menu, going to the submenu. We could achieve that by just running the code related to the original analysis output. And any of the options that we had selected as we were going through the menus, the submenus previously with mean, median, and mode, graphical output, bar chart, etc., that would all be included in our syntax as well. So from this syntax file, we could just select the syntax for as it pertains to our prior analytical output, click on the run selection, and then that allows us to duplicate the steps necessary to create the output. And as you get better understanding the syntax, you can start making changes to the syntax. So let's say that you wanted to perform a frequency analysis in a similar manner, which was performed for Q2, but you wanted to do it also for Q4. Well, if that were the case, you could just copy this bit of syntax, change Q2 to Q4, and run this. And there is our output for frequency analysis as it relates to variable Q4. Now, final thing before we go, because again, this was supposed to be a short, quick, and easy lecture. You're going to have to save, if you'd like to be able to use them again, you're going to have to save every one of these files individually. So if you wanted to save your output, and this is going to be in the SPSS format, if you wanted to save your output, you would have to go to File, Save As, and then select a name and a pathway for your output. And that way you don't lose your output after you leave your SPSS session. You can open it up again and view it. If you wanted to save your syntax, it also has to be saved individually. So this would allow you to then open this up at a later time and be able to utilize this syntax file. So again, we have to save our output if we wanted to refer to our output in a future session, our syntax if we wanted to utilize the syntax in a future session, and our data itself would also have to be saved if we wanted to utilize it in a future session. So in the end, you'll have 4 distinct files that you're working with, okay? You'll have your original data file, which you imported into SPSS that generated these variables and observations here that you might modify one way or the other. All right, so that was your original file. You obviously don't need to save that. You just use that file to generate your SPSS data from the import. Once you have your SPSS data, if you want to be able to easily access it and all the modifications that you made to it. Remember, the modifications are only to the SPSS version of the file which was imported. You have to save the data file. And then if you want to access the SPS version of the output, you have to save that as well. And the syntax you also have to save. So you'll have four distinct files: the original file that you imported, the SPS version of the file that you imported and perhaps modified, the output from your analysis, and the syntax if you wanted to use syntax to replicate the analysis that you had created and applied throughout the SPS session. So that's where we're going to leave today. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave a comment. We're trying to get the message out to as many users as possible. Best of luck in your research, and thank you so much for stopping by. Until next time, take care.